Assetto Corsa Evo? I'm just going to call it ACE from now on, is finally launched in early access, and I know you guys want the opinion of one person, the iRacing guy who only turns left. Well, luckily for you, Kunos and 505 Games thought the same, and they sent me a code for the early access of ACE. So thank you a lot to them, but today I'm going to be answering the question, is it worth buying the game in early access right now, and what is my first impressions of the game? My first experience with the game was just trying to get it set up, and even though I thought it might be a little bit easy because of how seamless ACC set up for me, it was still a bit of a challenge, which is probably due to the early access. The first thing, the menus were not giving me a lot of confidence. They were probably the laggiest menus I've ever been in. It made me wonder if my PC was even good enough for the game as a whole because of just lagging in the menus, but luckily that proved not to be true for the most part. Next, when I went into the controls, it picked up my wheel and pedals just fine, but the one quirk about that was my pedals had inverted controls, so that when I went into my first session, I was just blasting the throttle and the brake, but that's an easy fix. There's a button to invert it, and that's perfect. The next 15 or 30 minutes of my ACE experience was messing with graphics. I have a 3080 graphics card and a bit of a bottleneck in my CPU. It's a little bit outdated, but it seemed to me that the game was utilizing mostly my GPU, so I was trying to find what settings worked the best for my scenario. I was able to run medium just fine on its own, except for some stuttering problems that didn't seem to have anything to do with what my graphics were at. Whether I was at very low or high, I was getting decent performance with occasional stutters. So I'm not sure where the stutters are coming from, and if anybody has any suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments. Ultimately though, when I first tried to record with my webcam, it was starting to glitch out. So this game doesn't play very well with my Logitech StreamCam. It's the same effect that happens when I try to have my webcam on at the same time in both Discord and OBS. I recognized what was going on there, and because of that I said, okay, I don't know why ACE needs to work with my webcam at all like that. I don't know what it's doing, what it's messing with, so maybe that's a bug that can get patched out later, or maybe my webcam is just bad. So I decided no webcam for the video, I'll do post commentary, and then I get into the car and I realize that even though my driving at medium graphics is very smooth and I like it, I look over to my recording and it cannot handle it. So something about that, maybe I was maxing out my GPU close enough with the medium graphics to where the recording wasn't working. So if that gives you an idea benchmark of performance, I was running 1080p instead of 1440. I was running medium graphics, and that seemed to about tap my 3080 graphics card. Dude, I swear to you, in the 2 minutes since I recorded that last part, I broke my headphone jack, screwed up my camera focus, and YouTubing is hard, guys. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. It's a really tough life out here. But anyways, into the meat and potatoes of the actual game, the driving. What was the driving like in my first laps around here? So the first car that I chose, there wasn't much of a choice because the game was offline at this point. So I chose the Abarth because I've never heard of it before, and you can make fun of me all you want for not knowing what that is, but I just thought that I would choose the car that I never drive before, but then drive on the track that I know how to drive, which is Laguna Seca. The first things I noticed as I started driving was the feeling of the car and how it kind of differed from iRacing. I was comparing it to the Moza MX-5, which you, I guess, can or can't do. I'd like your opinion on that. But the way I was driving it just as I would in iRacing, and it was a pretty fun experience for just the first couple laps testing the game. I could notice immediately the curb feeling. That is like super apparent between this game and iRacing. The sound as I was going, it could have been better, I think. I don't think I was extremely immersed in the sound. It felt a little bit artificial to me, and I think I saw some people with a similar opinion, but that was just my gut feeling, even not being the biggest car guy out there. The handling of the car was pretty intuitive. I picked up on it almost instantly. I was comparing it to iRacing here or there, and really I was just approaching it in the same ways. The differences seemed more in the details than in just how the car felt entirely. The car was more inclined to understeer, but that was probably because of the lower power nature of the car. And I was really trying to use the curbs because I really like the curb feelings. The force feedback in ACE felt very good. I was very immersed in terms of the feeling of the bumps. I could really get that clear compared to even the same track, Laguna Seca, on iRacing. But the driving itself, to me, didn't differentiate itself too much in what I would expect from an Assetto Corsa game. And as I was driving around, I was also trying to be very aware of how immersive the game was. That's not something I usually give much credit to because I personally don't care about immersion too much when sim racing. I really just do it to go fast. But when you're going to directly compete against the Forza Horizons and the Gran Turismos of the world, you're going to need to have those immersive feeling graphics. And so even on those medium settings, those low settings, I was trying to be aware of how immersive ACE was. And definitely it's impossible to be that immersive on low graphics levels in any game, really. So as I was trying to do it on the higher graphics settings, to me, the game still felt a little bit artificial looking, if that makes sense. Like, it looks very good objectively, but there's just something about how the lighting works, how the models are, something about it. Whereas I'm driving around, it just feels a little artificial more than it could be. But with that being said, I got comfortable with the car, and now it was time to start my first AI race. I went with the default difficulty, which was 90%, and honestly, that was too easy, even for my left-turning brain, because I was able to get up front pretty quickly and then just drive away by like 10 seconds at the end of 4 laps. Felt like I was running pretty clean by the end of it, so probably going to the higher end. My I rating on road is like 2K at best, maybe a little more. So 90, that's probably more like a 1K level in iRacing. I did like how the AI drove. It was very wonky off of every start at Laguna Seca and any car. Every single start had some sort of car just absolutely door slamming another car into the wall off the start on the inside wall, which was always kind of funny. And they always do the AC super signature turn off the start for whatever reason. Everyone jolts to one side and back. You know what I'm talking about. But how they actually drove side by side was pretty intuitive, pretty reasonable. I didn't have any issues with the AI in that case, and it was a good drive, and I was able to learn the car and the track combo, and was pretty happy with how it drove. Very consistent. Felt like I didn't really need to pick up any idiosyncrasies with the game or anything like that. I could just drive and start to improve from there. Didn't need to know anything special. But that was enough of the lower power cars. I wanted to try one of the higher power cars, and which one better to do than the one that looks most like a NASCAR, the Chevy Camaro. Now this car was a lot more of a handful and a struggle. I really was trying to understand how to drive this car because it had a lot more oversteer, but the oversteer that I got happened very gradual. It's something that I'm not used to, and I think it's something that's very signature to AC over something like iRacing. In iRacing, you seem to lose all your grip at once, and you're kind of gone, and they call it ice racing for that reason. With ACE, and kind of all the other AC games as well, I would go into a corner and kind of know I was losing grip, and I would either have to really back off to save it or just let it slow spin for the rest of the corner and probably not make it. That was something that I found out very quickly, and as I was driving that car, I was learning a lot about it. To me, that type of driving, I'm just not used to. I cannot tell you if that's a better or worse thing. That's just something that I noticed was a big difference. But for the most part, the driving was pretty on par with what I have had and experienced with AC so far. It seems like the majority of what's going on here is in the force feedback. The force feedback feels so good. Probably my favorite force feedback I've felt in a game. And then at the same time, all the graphic updates and all that stuff is what they're going for. The other parts of the driving, the handling, and all of that seems to be pretty set in stone. I don't think it's too different than anything that you would expect it to be, for instance. And of course, this game is in early access. They're just in phase 1 right now, so just the original 5 tracks, 20 cars. A good variety that you can choose from. I know it launched earlier with just the few low power cars, which are the starter access. That kind of gives us a little teaser of what the game is actually going to be. Definitely trending more on the Forza Horizon side of the genre, which makes sense. That's what they said. They're not misleading anyone with that. For the sim racing community, I think that it could really serve some of them perfectly. Like, people just want to drive a more realistic car with that sort of gameplay that is more rewarding, like Forza Horizon, for people who maybe don't just want to grind ranked races and become a pro esports driver. Those type of games have a community for sure. I'm just wondering if it's something that is going to be able to pull people over from Gran Turismo when their strength is really how they make the game look in the presentation. And kudos to their credit, they are doing their best. They have cars that look good, the driving feels good. I'm just wondering if the graphics that they can come up with can really bring something to the table that can pull people away from the AAA games. So would I recommend buying ACE right now for $30? I think that for what the current product is, that's steep, but you are buying it also just to have access as it gets updated and as it goes into the future and finally gets released as a full game. That seems like a good enough deal if you are already planning to buy the game. If you're on the fence on whether to get it or not, I don't think anything that you can do in the game right now will convince you one way or the other. It's just AI races and testing session with limited tracks and limited cars. I think that this game is going to have just a lot more to offer than what it has right now. So I would hold off if you really don't want to spend the money right now. It'll definitely be worth it in the future. But I'm going to keep driving this game right after I get a new adapter for my headphones because I only have a right ear right now. But other than that, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the game. Those are just my initial impressions playing the game for 2 or 3 hours. That is my just raw impressions, not really reading anything about what anyone else is saying. And what the heck do I know anyways, right? I'm going back to NASCAR right now. All right, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope to see you all on the track.